While HBO's upcoming fantasy reboot is set to be the biggest TV event of the decade so far, this is not necessarily an entirely good thing for the cable network. For over 2 decades, HBO had one of the best-defined brands in the history of TV. The cable network carved out a niche for itself in the early 90s with hit shows like the 7-season horror anthology classic Tales from the Crypt, a series whose high production values and plentiful gore, nudity, and swearing proved that cable didn't need to look like traditional network TV. In the decades that followed, HBO harnessed this popularity and invested in mature, decidedly adult shows that garnered critical acclaim thanks to their complexity and moral ambiguity. The Sopranos, 6 Feet Under, Sex in the City, Band of Brothers, The Wire, and the iconic and brutal western Deadwood all proved that TV could be ambitious, cinematic, and firmly R-rated if it came from a cable network, and this emboldened the likes of Starz, Showtime, and AMC to pursue similar projects. However, 2011's Game of Thrones changed everything. The biggest hit in HBO history, this gruesome, complicated, and incredibly ambitious fantasy show proved 2 things. 1. HBO was suddenly the undisputed king of fantasy TV, and 2. R-rated fantasy shows were a hot commodity. In the years that followed, everything from Prime Video's Critical Role shows The Legend of Vox Machina and The Mighty Nein to Netflix's The Witcher and Castlevania, to Starz's Outlander, to AMC's Interview with the Vampire, borrowed this approach. Now, HBO is set to redefine fantasy TV again with 2020 SIX's Harry Potter reboot. HBO's Harry Potter reboot is the biggest fantasy show ever. While Game of Thrones was massive enough to earn 2 spin-offs in the form of House of the Dragon and A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, it is important to note that the original show wasn't an instant global phenomenon. Game of Thrones built up its fanbase throughout its run, and it wasn't until the end of the show's 8th seasons that its audience numbers peaked. In contrast, HBO's upcoming Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone TV show is set to be massive right out the gate. In terms of world-famous fantasy franchises, it doesn't get much bigger than the Harry Potter series, and HBO has already invested an unprecedented amount into the show's budget, meaning this will be no small reimagining. The very fact that HBO's upcoming Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone TV show arrives a month after Season 3 of Rings of Power, Prime Video's infamously expensive Lord of the Rings series, proves how confident the cable network is about this series. Harry Potter's TV reboot is betting big on one major genre change. However, the fact that HBO's Harry Potter show will be massive doesn't necessarily mean it will be a success. The Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone TV show is banking on one massive shift in the fantasy TV genre, namely a move from mature, R-rated shows to family-friendly viewing, in order to succeed. Harry Potter is and always has been a child-friendly brand, whereas all the biggest fantasy TV shows of the last decade have been firmly aimed at adults. Even rare outliers like Rings of Power, which is technically suitable for older kids, are still squarely aimed at adults. In contrast, HBO's Harry Potter show is, like the books it is based on, aimed primarily at children. This will make it easier for the target demographic to overlook author J.K. Rowling's history of transphobia, but it also means that the show runs a risk of failing to find its audience. Thus, HBO's Harry Potter show may collapse under the weight of its expensive ambition precisely because the reboot is TV's biggest event in years.